Hi, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Hunter.
Today we're going to be diving into the struggles of families impacted by addiction.
That's right, we're going to be exploring the devastating effects of drug addiction, how it impacts children who have been exposed to it, how it often leads to cycles of incarceration, and how difficult it is to get help.
The book Our America, which we read in class and will be connecting to our podcast a few times, had a reoccurring theme of addiction, not only to alcohol but also to drugs. The book is a nonfiction read about two boys living in the projects of South Chicago, going through school and living in homes with addiction and communities of violence. Although less prevalent in the book, its message on drug addiction is that it ruins families and is detrimental to those kids and those families.
I feel like drugs are being pushed on kids all the time, especially on social media. In Our America, we read that Lee Allen's friend, George, who is only about 13 and selling drugs, he believes that he will live for the rest of his life doing that.
I remember that in the book. When Lee Allen confronts his friend, he says, I'm not gonna be alive in 10 years because I'll be selling drugs and they're gonna kill me. No one's gonna be alive in 20 more years.
Since the invention of social media and just over time, the amount of kids being exposed to drugs has gone up significantly, even in CT.
Based on information from the National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics, teenagers in Connecticut are 7.47% more likely to have used drugs in the last month than the average American teen. In the entire country, 8.95% of 12 to 17-year-olds reported using drugs in the previous month.
And I just want to say, before we start, that due to the underreporting, some statistics are lower than they should be. This is mostly because there's a stigma against addiction.
We want to let everyone know that addiction is an illness, not a crime, and that people struggling should find help without worrying about the opinions of others. Hunter, I know you have a couple of your own family drug struggles. Want to talk about it?
Let's do it. Yeah, so most of my family has always had a weed addiction, and they believe that it is a very medicinal drug, which it is considered most of the time, but in moderation. They smoke it every single day, though.
That's a lot of smoking. How much does that even cost?
Well, I've done a little bit of my fair share of research and found that 1 ounce of weed can cost anywhere from $160 to $450. That's about like a month of smoking. And I think that's a lot of money for 1 month.
That's probably a common reason why people who have a drug addiction struggle with making money, especially since other more illicit drugs can be really expensive. Thanks for sharing, but I have one more question. How did this affect you?
I'll be honest, it made me want to do it. Even though the guilt I had for my family, I still wanted to try it. But I'm too young and I'll wait till my legal age. But I still felt bad for my family. Their lungs can't take any more smoking and are very old and out of shape now. And now, due to the lazy side effects of cannabis, most of my family is overweight now.
All right, but let's move on. In the next segment, we'll be talking about how addiction affects people and causes incarceration rates to go up. So even though addiction itself shouldn't be treated like a crime and more like a mental health disorder, possession of most to all drugs in almost all states is a crime. And before researching for this episode, we thought that there wasn't much crime related to drugs. It turns out the percentage of drug-related crimes surpasses most blue-collar crimes.
Okay, but what's a blue-collar crime?
Yeah, it can be a hard thing to describe. A blue-collar crime is a crime that's mostly associated with lower class and involves physical contact and visibility. People usually commit them and they're intended to quickly benefit the person committing the crime. Something like an armed robbery, drug-related crimes, theft, or something like burglary.
So how do drug-related crimes outnumber other similar crimes, though? Doesn't the Federal Bureau of Prisons say that 44.2% of people incarcerated in U.S. prisons are there for drug-related crimes?
Well, that's actually the highest percentage of all the reasons people are in prison. More people are still incarcerated for drug offenses than for homicide, aggravated assault, and kidnapping, robbery, sex offenses, weapons, explosives, and arson combined. Those barely add up to 41% of prisoners' tried offenses.
That's so crazy. I think that people assume that prisons are mostly filled with violent offenders or people who committed really serious crimes. And so many of these cases involve people caught just possessing them or distributing them. All of this leads to families being separated and jobs lost.
And when that happens, it becomes so much harder for people to get help with their addiction. When people can't get help and come back out of jail, what do you think they're going to do when they have access to the thing they were just addicted to before? Not only does addiction affect yourself, but others, especially people in the addict's family. Addiction makes families spend lots of money and become disconnected.
And when they do seek help, they often find the support systems out there that really are hard to navigate. Rehab programs, insurance coverage, finding the right therapists, it's all expensive and complicated.
On average, the around lowest cost of drug rehabilitation for one person is $4,250. Not only is that a huge price to pay, but it can be detrimental to a person who doesn't make a lot of money. That often means addicts have to quit using for themselves, which is very, very difficult. This is portrayed very well in Our America, where one of the main characters, Dad, named Chill, is addicted to alcohol and struggles to find help, even though he knows he has a problem.
This affects millions of families. Having a drug addict in the family can be really stressful for the other members of it. Imagine how a person who cares about someone very much has to watch their family go through that. Addiction makes loved ones feel shame and guilt, not knowing where to turn.
In the end, there will always be a drug addiction problem in the world, but we have to do something about it. With drugs being the main reason people get incarcerated or imprisoned, we think people with more legislative power should focus on providing more help to people who are addicts so they don't fall into a cycle of drugs and arrest, in turn harming the communities and families they belong in. More should be done to inform adolescents about drugs and how they affect their loved ones and their future. These seem like such simple things to be done to fix the problem, but anything should be done about the addiction issue in US.
Unless we take real steps to break the cycle through education, support, and compassionate policies, we're only letting addiction continue to harm individuals, families, and communities across not just the south side of Chicago, but the whole United States.